Today we have a very important patch to talk about, and honestly, I like the direction of this update. The burn meta has been extremely dominant lately, mostly because Bernice was able to combine aggressive burn pressure with some of the best defensive tools in the game. But this patch does not simply delete Bernice from the meta. Instead, it nerfs some key defensive pieces, adjusts several commanders, and introduces new archetypes with important reworks. So in this video, we are going to break down the biggest changes, what they mean for the meta, and which units might become much more important after this patch. Let's get into it! Zoé and Chloé received a very interesting buff. Their first ability now applies 10% more infection, and their third ability steals 10% more attacks. This is a big buff. The infection increase gives them more damage pressure over time, while the stronger attacks still reduce the enemy's pressure and make them much harder to trade into. But the most important part is the synergy with Pixie. Zoé and Chloé were already interesting with Pixie because it helped create pressure and enable stronger combo turns. Now, with more infection and stronger attack steal, this duo becomes much more threatening. And stronger attack steal, this duo becomes much more threatening. I don't think this alone completely breaks the meta, but it definitely makes Zoé and Chloé more attractive in aggressive and tempo-based compositions. Now, let's move to the nerf. The first major mercenary nerf is Nonna, and this one is huge. Her first ability has been changed. Holography now only applies to allies within one cell range on the same row. Her third ability was also changed. The healing now only triggers one at the start of the next turn. This is a massive nerf because Nonna was one of the best defensive units for Bernice in almost every matchup except maybe the mirror. She gave too much safety, too much time, and made it extremely hard for other commanders to punish Bernice. With this nerf, Bernice loses one of her strongest defensive layers, and that matters a lot. Because now, if the Bernice player wants to survive a decisive turn, they may be forced to use Sky earlier on a worse timing. That makes the game much more attractive. This is exactly the kind of nerf I like. It does not kill Nonna, but it stops her from being a universal defensive answer to everything. Next nerf, Agrat. Agrat's attack has been reduced by 5% both in shooter and fighter form. And in shooter form, her commander infection has also been reduced by 5%. This is mainly a nerf to explosive Bernice compositions. In my opinion, this was probably the most oppressive Bernice variant against other commanders. The idea was simple: apply burn, apply infection, press your face, and force the opponent to survive too many damage sources at once. With this nerf, Agrat still remains useful, but she applies less direct pressure. That means fewer instant blowout games and more room for other commanders to actually play the game. Now let's talk about the reworks, because this is where the patch becomes really exciting. First, Weaver. Weaver's drones have been reworked. When they appear, they now apply burn to all enemies. That means if Weaver summons 4 drones, that is 4 burn application. At the end of the turn, they also apply 10% increased damage taken to wounded units. This is massive. This finally gives Bernice a real burn archetype around the mercenary. But more importantly, burn is now accessible to every commander, and that changes a lot. Before, burn was mostly a Bernice identity. Now, other commanders can start using burn pressure too. That means Cinta no longer completely shut down late game burn pressure by herself. If burn can come from River and not only from Bernice, then the whole meta becomes more complex. I really like this design choice. It is risky, but it gives the games more depth. And the craziest part is the potential synergy with Paige. Imagine Paige using burn pressure while also stacking stats. That will become extremely scary. I'm very excited to test Wyver after this patch. For me, this is one of the biggest changes in the update. Next, rework Kira. Kira no longer summons partisans when she destroys a module, which makes sense. But her second ability is now much stronger. Her attack increased by 100% whenever any mercenary dies. And Kira's partisans now grant force shield when they appear and when they die. This is huge. Kira already wants force shield synergy, and Paige also works with force shield. That means Kira may become a core piece in Paige composition. She can scale extremely fast. If she stays on the board for 1 or 2 turns, maybe 3 at most, she can become a whole hyper carry. And with multi-attack setups, this can become very dangerous. Kira might now threaten OTK turns much faster than before. So for me, Kira is not just a small rework, she may become one of the most important offensive scaling mercenaries after this patch. Now let's talk about commanders nerfs. First, Désirée. This nerf only affects players below level 107. So for high level ladder, this is not really a major nerf. To me, this is more of an anti-frustration adjustment for League 2 or lower. And honestly, I like that. It shows that the developers are not only looking at League 1 stats, they're also looking at how frustrating some commanders can feel at lower levels. Her passive healing is reduced by 5%. Her second ability also has 5 less healing, which means fewer mercenaries dying immediately on summon. And her third ability has 10% less damage, making her finisher weaker. So yes, this is a nerf. At high ladder, Désirée should still be playable. The change is mostly about making her less frustrating for lower leagues. Next, Elaine. Elaine received 2 different nerfs. The first one only affects players below level 111. So this can still matter up to League 1 depending on your level. Her module HP is reduced by 5%. Her module damage is reduced by 10%. Her module resistance is reduced by 5%. And explosion stimulant damage is reduced by 5%. The last one is pretty minor. The goal here is clear. Make the module easier to deal with lower levels. But the real nerf is the second one, because it applies at every level. The module no longer gives 15% resistance 5 times, now it gives 10% resistance, and that resistance decreases by 10% each turn. This is a real nerf to Elaine's core defensive identity. Elaine is still a control commander, she still has module pressure, board control, and late game tools. But she is now less durable, especially against burn pressure and aggressive setup. This matters a lot because Elaine was trying to survive the burn meta through resistance and positioning. Now that defensive engine is weaker, so Elaine may still be strong, but she will be less forgiving. Next, Paige. Paige's nerf only affects level 85 or below, so for high leagues there are no real changes. Her passive now gives 10% less attack buff and attack debuff each time a force shield expires. And her first ability gives 5% less health buff each time a force shield expires. For me, this is another low level adjustment. It reduces Paige's early power for newer players, but it does not really change her place in high level meta. That is important because Paige might actually become more relevant after this patch. If Bernice loses some defensive protection and if Nonna is weaker, Paige may finally have more room to find her OTK windows again. So even though Paige technically receives a nerf, I think the overall patch may still be good for her. And now, the big one, Bernice. Bernice finally received a direct nerf. Her resistance has been reduced by 10%. Her first ability, Burn, has been reduced by 10%. And second ability, Burns, has also been reduced by 10%. In my opinion, this is an excellent nerf. Bernice is still strong, she still has burn pressure, she still has tempo, and with the Wyver reworks, burn archetype may actually become even more interesting. but it should be less oppressive overall. And this is exactly what I wanted. I didn't want Bernice to disappear from the game. I wanted a healthier meta where Bernice remains playable, but where Paige, Elaine and Désirée can also return to the conversation. At high ladder, Bernice is the only commander who was really nerfed directly, and I think that is a good decision. The goal should not be to take Bernice from 90% of the meta to 5%. The goal should be to make room for the natural counter cycle to work again. Bernice has aggressive burn, Paige has combo scaling, Elaine has control, Désirée has mid-range anti-control. The kind of meta will be much healthier and much more interesting. So overall, I really like this patch. Nonna and Agrat nerf reduce Bernice's strongest defensive and explosive tools. River and Kira open new archetypes. Elaine and Paige get low level adjustment, with Elaine receiving a real defensive nerf at all levels. Désirée gets an anti-frustration adjustment for lower leagues, and Bernice gets a clean, direct nerf without being deleted from the game. That is good balancing. Now, before ending the video, I want to mention one mercenary I personally wanted to see buffed. Billy. Billy is almost completely absent from the game right now, and I would love to see her become relevant again. She has a cool design, but currently she does not really have a place in a top composition. So for me, if I had to choose one mercenary for a future buff, it would be Billy. But now, I want to hear your opinion. Which mercenary would you like to see buff? Which mercenary would you like to see nerfed? And are you happy with this patch? Let me know in the comments, and remember, the best composition is not the one that's meta, it's the one you master.